I just think they look so cool. Hello! So, I have recently been inspired by all of the patchwork clothing that has come out this summer. And while summer's really winding down, coming into fall, I wanted to go ahead and continue dipping my toe in patchwork. I am always inspired by the things that Carly B makes. If you don't know who she is an insane sewist that does all kinds of patchwork things and really extravagant puffy dresses and all kinds of amazing items. I follow her on Instagram, and I was scrolling through her page and I was inspired by this patchwork hoodie that she made. And I decided that I wanted to do it kind of with my own spin. With that, I decided to go through my scraps and try to make a scrappy patchwork hoodie for myself. I work in a school that's pretty casual. We're allowed to wear jeans, things that are just overall appropriate for kids, nothing too strict. And I think that having a patchwork hoodie like this would definitely be something that I can wear in kind of a bright, colorful, loud environment while also helping to keep me warm, because one of the schools that I'm at is just freezing all the time. I don't know if I'll be able to do it today, but hopefully by tomorrow I'll be able to gather all of my scraps from their different locations and start kind of figuring out what I have and what I need to do to make this happen. So right now I'm just going through and ironing out all of my scraps and separating them into kind of larger pieces and smaller pieces. That way I know kind of where I'm gonna put them in terms of placement. A lot of the smaller pieces I'll probably sew together and then kind of make like a patch out of them. Here are some examples that I found in my scrap box of what I've done in the past, where I've just kind of sewn all of them together. These are some old quilt blocks that I have that will kind of do the same thing with some of these small ones. So I think it just adds some cool variety to the jacket. So I'm gonna go through and do this with some of the smaller ones. So yeah, that's what I'm doing as I sort them. I recently got this tabletop ironing board at an estate sale, and it is my new favorite thing. It makes it so I don't have to get up from my sewing machine in order to go iron something, which just absolutely saves me because I never want to do that when I'm sewing. So God bless this little $4 ironing board I got. But yeah, so right now just going through the scraps, kind of seeing what I can do with them, seeing what I have, seeing kind of what's too small, what can I save, like this is a bodice or something that in no ways would fit me anymore, but I really want to salvage specifically this fabric because I think this fabric's really cool, and I do really like this blue as well. But just seeing what I can do, I want to make this as colorful as possible, so really trying to use as many of my different scraps as I can, trying to get the whole rainbow in there. So I'm gonna keep ironing and see if I can start kind of cutting out more squares, more rectangles to work with. Okay, I've done a considerable amount of hours worth of work here, and this is what I've come up with. It's not all sewn together, they're in different blocks. This is about a yard, and I think I'm going to need at least 3 yards in order to make this a hoodie. So this is going to be a long-term project. Definitely not something that I'm going to be able to get done in just this amount of time, which is a little bit disappointing. I thought it was going to go a lot faster than this, but I'm pretty happy with the progress that I've made so far. I think it looks really nice, but it is definitely something that I'm gonna have to work on over the weekends. So I'm gonna be done with this for tonight, work on something else, and continue working on it probably this weekend. It's Labor Day weekend, so that'll be what I do with my extra day. It's times like this that being a scrap hoarder is really helpful, because realistically, what am I going to do with a scrap fabric that's this big? Like, nothing incredible besides use it in a scrap project. So for this, I'm just gonna cut this down, and then I'll have like a nice long strip that I'll be able to put on the end of one of the blocks to make it a little bigger. I laid out a lot of my fabric pieces that I've made so far, and I'm realizing that it's leaning very like cool toned, and I want it to be in more of a rainbow. And so I'm gonna have to go in and add some warmer pieces. So I set aside a bunch of my orange, red, and yellow scraps, and I'm going to try to incorporate those in some of the blocks that I already have. That way I can try to warm up the whole piece altogether, because I want this to be bright, I want it to be loud, I don't want it to be something that's a little more cool tone and a little more muted. So really trying to bring in some of the fire back to the pieces. Many days later, and at this point I've just been sewing the pieces together over and over and over again in order to make bigger blocks. That's the thing about making patchwork clothes or any kind of quilted clothes, is that you have to make your fabric first and then cut your pieces and then sew them all together. So it's just like triple the work that you would if you were making a normal garment. So the outcome is definitely worth it, I think, but it does take some time. Like, the larger blocks that I have right now are very pretty and about this long. And I have probably 10 or 12 of these. So that should be enough in order to get started on the hoodie. If I need any more for the hood, then I can go ahead and like use up all of my scraps to fill in that. The good thing about this is that as I'm cutting along, any excess fabric I have, I could just sew it all together and make a bigger piece, because all of this is scraps. And there are some pieces that are more firmly packed together than others. So like you can see in this piece specifically, all of this down here, larger blocks, but then as you go in here, there's some really small scraps from where this has just been like cut and resewn and cut and resewn and cut and resewn. And so like there's gonna be the tiniest little triangle of yellow shown, if any. The thing I like about these things is that you can go in and be like, oh, I made a skirt out of this fabric. This was a quilt block that never got finished. This is the same quilt block. This is part of a top that I made. Oh, I made pot holders out of these. I have a shirt that's made out of this one. So you get lots of memories in a block. And this is a very small one, and I had all of that blocks that have larger amounts on them, like this. Then you get way more memories. So I'm like, oh, I made pajamas, and this one was a skirt, and this was a quilted top that I made, and this was a dress. This was part of my quilted jacket. This was the quilt that I have on my bed. I made a shirt out of this one. This was the lining for a makeup bag. This was the lining for my quilted jacket. This was also on this shirt that I have. This one was part of the patchwork dress that I have. So lots of different memories, lots of cool things. I just love how they all come together. Okay, it's the next day, and I'm putting the larger pieces together at this point. I have those are all doubled up right now. And I'm realizing that I don't have enough. No matter how many times I make blocks and cut things and put them back together, I think I have enough, and I'm realizing that I just don't have enough. Sleeves take up so much fabric that it's actually quite painful. I don't know why sleeves take up so much fabric, but they truly do. It's painful. I don't like it. I currently have enough for the body and the hood, maybe one sleeve, but I do not have enough to do both sleeves, much less any other kind of pocket detail that I might attempt to do. So With that, I'm gonna have to try to beef these up a little bit, if not make an entirely new panel just for the sleeve. So I'm gonna go in with some other scraps that I have and some other pieces of fabric. These were like parts of quilt blocks that I wasn't gonna use that I'm now very much going to use. So hopefully I can at least get the fabric done for this in a reasonable time. It's been many days. I've worked many hours on the patchworking and I haven't even quilted it. I haven't even cut out the hoodie part. So this is a slow moving project. This is going a lot slower than I thought. It's a good thing I started when it was warm, not when I needed it or wanted to wear it. It's currently 98 degrees outside, so I definitely am working with some heat involved, but it's currently not something I would wear, so that does make it a little more reasonable to work on right now and makes me feel a little bit better about how long that it's taking. Okay, I have all of my pieces cut out and assigned to their piece of fabric. It was a lot to figure out how big these pieces needed to be before I cut out the pattern, but I did a really good job estimating. I did cut some pieces off though because they were too long, and then I want to use these pieces in another patchwork piece for a different area of the hoodie. So I have just like these long strips that I'm gonna sew together. That's the good thing about making a patchwork hoodie like this, is that you can just kind of recycle pieces that don't get used. And it looks so seamless because like no one's gonna know that this came off of another piece because it's patchwork and it's supposed to look like that. I am one piece short. I am working on expanding this. This is part of the hood of the hoodie. I'm working on expanding this piece right now because it's not big enough, and so this was another end that I'm adding some pieces so that it's big enough when it's quilted. When things are quilted, they tend to shrink up a little bit, so I want to add room for that, because if I cut it and it's too small, that would be a disaster. I did cut out an extra large of this hoodie pattern. I think it's going to be too big. Always easier to make things smaller than it is to make them bigger, so I'm not worried about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut out the pieces for the extra large and then work my way down from there as I need.
Unfortunately, I already filmed this part, but I was sat too far back and you couldn't see me. So I'm gonna make this short and sweet. This is the largest area that I have that is not carpet. My apartment is mostly carpet, so if I want to use flat surface, I have to use my table, which is too small, or I have to use this area right here. Fingers crossed, this works. I'm going to go ahead and use this blue fabric that I have for the backing for my quilt pieces. I got this fabric at an estate sale and I got it for free. I got it on the last day of the sale, and when I got it, there was originally 8 yards of this cotton. And I ended up using this as my Renaissance Fair skirt, so you might recognize this color. But I still have about 4 or 5 yards of this, and so there should be more than enough for me to make this project. If for some reason there's not, then I plan on using the hoodie pocket and the hood out of a different material. Something fancier. Those two things, I just feel like there's a higher chance of them being seen, especially the hood as it lays back. So I would want those pieces to be out of a cool fabric. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't mind the inside body lining and the sleeves being made out of like this blue, areas that aren't going to be seen as much. This is a fabric that I don't particularly care about, so that is why I'm using it for the lining. I have watched 7 TikToks on how to do this, so obviously I am a master. I went to the store and I bought some spray adhesive. I know that there is quilting adhesive that you can purchase, but when I went to Joann's just now, there wasn't any available, and I'm not about to drive around going to a different store. So it's bad enough that I went to the grocery store and looked in their hardware section to get this. I bought the cheapest one possible. I am slightly worried that this won't wash out and that my hoodie will be stiff, but I'm hoping that that won't be a problem. I'm gonna use just like the lightest layer possible for this project. So I'm gonna go ahead, cut out some pieces from my backing. I have some tape to tape them down onto the floor. I'm going to use spray adhesive as well as safety pins in order to bind these pieces together. And then tomorrow I can go ahead and start actually quilting my layers together.
From now on, I'm only using spray adhesive. It's a miracle worker. I went through and I did all of my pieces and they lay so nice and flat, and I just know that putting them through a sewing machine, even without a walking foot, is just gonna be so easy. I'm so excited. I'm pinning them anyway because some of the corners are starting to come up a little bit the more I move the pieces around. So I'm gonna put just like a couple of pins in them just to keep them in place. But I really don't think they need it. So I'm gonna pin these, only have a few more, and then tomorrow I'll go ahead and actually start quilting these. I'm so excited to be done with the making of fabric and then move on to the cutting of fabric. Because right now it looks nothing like a hoodie. I just have all of these pieces that have taken me hours of work, and I haven't even started to like cut the hoodie pieces out. Once that happens, it'll go by so quick. This has taken so long. It's taken a lot longer than I anticipated. It has now been about a month since I last did a video update for this hoodie. I have just been quilting all of the pieces. I have so many pieces that had to be worked on and quilted, and it took a lot longer than I anticipated. That is the theme for this hoodie at this point. What I'm doing now is I am laying them all out and making sure that I for sure have the right measurements needed to make this hoodie. I have my pattern pieces all cut out as well. I have to go ahead and start laying out these pieces and making sure that the right size. Then I can actually start cutting out the pieces. From here on out should be the easy part, because now it's just like I'm making a regular hoodie. Before I had to make the fabric and make the hoodie. So we have the hard part done as far as I'm concerned. So one thing that I like to do is, as I'm sewing along, I put the bias tape on my inside seams as I go. That way I don't have to do any additional sewing later on. So what I'm going to do is, I already sewed the seam once. I now have just a piece of bias tape I'm using the same color blue as the rest of it so it blends in. And I'm just clipping that, and to reinforce, because this is a pretty heavy seam and especially the corners, the shoulders are going to be used quite a lot. I'm just going to go over that same seam line, and then when I'm all done, I'll be able to clip it, fold this over, and then sew along that same seam, sewing in the ditch, and this raw edge will all be concealed, and I won't have to worry about zigzagging. I don't have a serger, and it's just a nice way to get it all clean without having to do any additional prep along the way. So I'm gonna do that for these two shoulders, and then along the side seams as well. I'll try to do the arm curves and then the seam amongst the sleeves. This one will be by far be the trickiest. It might be something that I have to go in and hand sew all of. Hopefully not, but this one's going to be a challenge for me. I've never done something like this before. Another big point is that I tried to look up the pattern for this hoodie again because I wanted some direction on how to connect the hood to the body, because it is more of a squared neck and I haven't done that too often. I wanted to see if they had any tips or tricks on the website. And this hoodie pattern has been taken off the internet. There are pictures of it on Pinterest, but you click on the link and it doesn't go anywhere. I've tried Googling it. I've gone back to the website. This hoodie pattern no longer exists. And I've had the pattern printed out and cut out for that long that now going back it's no longer online. So I'm gonna have to figure it out by myself, how to connect this hoodie pattern. Also, I'm sorry I'm not gonna be able to link this hoodie in the description because it doesn't exist anymore. So you're just gonna have to wing it, I guess. It's kind of a standard hoodie pattern, except for the hood, but yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with that because I don't really know. So I'm gonna have to play around. Maybe, I hate making mock-ups, but I might make a mock-up. I really wanted to finish it this weekend, but if I have to play around with it too much, it might take too much time. I'm putting the sleeve in right now to test it out, and the sleeve is too big. And so I have to go in. The thing is, the sleeve, when I put it on my arm, I actually think it's either the perfect size or slightly too small. So I need to go in and make this armhole bigger. That way the sleeve can fit. I'm unsure if I want to take it in. I'll probably take it in the shoulder and in the armpit a little bit because I want it to fit both places, and this already has a little bit of a dropped shoulder. But it is like very much like that much of it too big. So that's gonna be the next problem. I think I see why this pattern was taken off the website, which like, yeah, that's not a step I was expecting to have to do. I'm sewing along and I broke my needle, and the tip of it is somewhere in the seam because I was going over a really, really thick seam right here where there's many, many layers. And so now the tip of the needle is in there. And when I squish it, I'm not being poked by it, so I'm just gonna have to leave it. But yeah, there is technically a good chunk of a needle in my hoodie now. And that is where it's going to live from now on, because there's no way I'm getting that out on its own. So I'm just gonna hope that it never comes back to poke me, and that's where it is. I'm gonna change the needle though and avoid going over that spot again, because there's no way I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna try to hand sew it, if anything, maybe. But I'm putting in the bias tape for the hood. It's a lot thicker than I thought it was going to be because there's just so many layers. So I'm just trying my best at this point. Just because I'm happy with how it is without it, and I wanted to keep that bright hoodie aspect to it. I did wear this hoodie to my job today, to this elementary school that I worked at. Got lots of compliments on it, lots of kids liked it, and it did a very good job of keeping you warm. Fun fact, if you use blankets as a jacket, then it will keep you warm. On the downside, I did not finish the lining for this hoodie. It is just the hood. Everything else is very well cleanly lined. All of the bias tapes edges in, all hand sewn, very nice. It is just this seam around the hood that I didn't finish. But I wanted to wear it, and I wanted to take fun photos and videos in it. So that is something that I will go in and do at a later date. But I really need to, because it's already starting to fray quite a bit. So I need to do that before I wear it again. Other than that, thank you so much for watching this video. This took me many months. I started this in August, and it is now currently the first week of November. Tomorrow is election day, the day that I'm uploading this video. If you're seeing this on election day, please go and vote. I live in Oregon, where I already mailed in my ballot, but it is so important that you have a voice, so please go ahead and vote. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you had a good time. I post videos every other Tuesday as much as I can, and I do all kinds of fun things. I like to quilt, I like to knit, I like to sew. So thank you. Bye.
I'm really hoping that I'm in frame for this and that, yeah, my mic works. But for right now, let's get going.
We'll see how this goes. I'm sure it'll be fine. I don't regret cutting the pattern too big. No. It's like a poncho. You can see my pajama pants.